I spent quite some time in hospital, but that was not supposed to happen.
Most people see freedom when they watch Noraly Schoenmaker ride across deserts, borders, and danger zones completely alone. Millions admire the fearless woman behind itchy boots. But what if that freedom came at a cost no one talks about? Behind the cinematic shots and calm voiceovers is a life built on isolation, sacrifice, and walking away from everything familiar. The road didn't just give her adventure, it took things from her too. And once you see what she gave up to live this life, her journey feels a lot less glamorous and a lot more lonely. Before the world knew her as Noraly Schoenmaker, her life looked completely different. No motorbike, no borders, no danger-filled adventures. She was deep into academics, working toward a future that promised stability, respect, and a clear path forward. On paper, it was the kind of life most people are told to chase, but something felt off. Travel wasn't just a break from routine for her, it flipped a switch. Each trip made the idea of settling down feel heavier, almost suffocating. The more she saw the world, the harder it became to imagine staying still. Eventually, she made a decision that shocked everyone around her. She walked away from years of education, a secure future, and the expectations placed on her. That choice wasn't glamorous. It meant selling her belongings, cutting ties with comfort, and stepping into uncertainty with no guarantees. There was no viral channel yet, no loyal audience, just a motorbike, a camera, and the quiet pressure of knowing there was no backup plan. And while it looked brave on the surface, it also meant choosing a life where being alone wasn't temporary. It was the default. But at the time, she believed the freedom would be worth it. What she didn't realize was how much that freedom would eventually take from her. And that's where the story really begins. Once the journey truly started, the loneliness hit faster than expected. Riding solo sounded empowering at first. Total control, no compromises, no one slowing her down. But day after day, that silence followed her everywhere. Long highway stretches, empty border towns, nights where the only voice she heard was her own. For Noraly Schoenmaker, being alone wasn't an occasional phase. It became the rhythm of her life. There were no teammates to lean on when plans fell apart, no familiar faces when things went wrong. If the bike broke down, she fixed it alone. If a route felt unsafe, the decision rested entirely on her shoulders. That constant independence builds strength, but it also carries weight. Over time, solitude stops feeling peaceful and starts feeling permanent. What viewers didn't see were the quiet moments between uploads, the long evenings editing footage in cheap rooms, the mental pressure of always having to push forward, even when energy ran low. Turning back wasn't an option anymore. Too much had already been sacrificed, and while the channel slowly grew, the distance between her and a normal life grew faster. Friends settled down, families moved on, she kept writing. What began as freedom quietly turned into something else entirely. And the deeper she went, the harder it became to admit just how isolating that road really was. As the views climbed, something unexpected happened. The journey stopped being just hers. Every upload came with expectations. Every route choice, every pause, every risk was now watched by millions. For Noraly Schoenmaker, the freedom she chased slowly turned into responsibility. The channel wasn't just documenting her life anymore, it was fueling it. Sponsors, deadlines, and algorithms don't care if you're tired or burned out. They demand consistency. That meant writing when she should have rested, filming when she needed quiet, smiling on camera even when the day had already drained her. Taking a break risked losing momentum, and momentum was everything. What viewers saw as independence was actually pressure. If she stopped, the income stopped. If the content slowed, the audience might move on. That kind of mental weight builds silently, especially when you're carrying it alone. There's no coworker to vent to, no boss to push responsibility onto. Every success and every mistake lands in the same place, on your shoulders. And the more the channel grew, the harder it became to separate real life from the version shown on screen. Adventure turned into obligation. Passion turned into routine. And somewhere along the way, the question shifted from where do I want to go next to how long can I keep this going before it costs me more than I expected. But the road ahead wasn't just mentally exhausting, it was about to get far more dangerous. At some point, the risk stopped being hypothetical. Riding solo through unfamiliar countries meant facing situations no guidebook could prepare her for. Mechanical failures in the middle of nowhere, sketchy encounters with strangers, borders where one wrong move could end the journey instantly. For Noraly Schoenmaker, danger wasn't a rare spike, it was a constant background noise. There were moments when things went quiet online and viewers speculated. Lost footage, delayed uploads, subtle changes in tone. Rumors swirled about close calls that never made it into full videos, and that silence spoke louder than any dramatic clip. When you travel alone, there's no safety net. If something goes wrong, help isn't a phone call away. It's hours, sometimes days out. What made it heavier was knowing that people expected her to keep pushing into riskier places. Safer routes didn't perform as well. Calm stretches didn't excite the algorithm. Adventure had to escalate to stay relevant. And with each escalation, the margin for error shrank. Fear became something she had to manage quietly. Showing too much of it could shatter the image people loved. Showing none of it meant carrying that weight alone. And while viewers clicked for adrenaline, she was the one living with the consequences long after the camera stopped rolling. But the danger on the road wasn't the only thing testing her limits. The emotional toll was catching up fast. Over time, longtime viewers started noticing small shifts. Nothing dramatic. No big announcement. Just subtle changes that felt off. The tone of her voice, the pacing of the videos, moments where the energy felt lower, more reserved. For Noraly Schoenmaker, the mask of endless enthusiasm was getting harder to hold. She still rode into remote places, still smiled for the camera, still delivered the adventure people expected. But there were hints of caution where there once was boldness. Longer pauses before decisions, more reflection, less reckless excitement. Almost as if the road had taught her lessons she didn't want to repeat. Some fans speculated about burnout. Others wondered if close calls behind the scenes had changed her perspective. A few even questioned whether the lifestyle was finally catching up with her physically or mentally. None of it was confirmed, but the shift was real enough to spark conversation. What made it complicated was that stepping back would mean rewriting the entire identity she'd built. She wasn't just a traveler anymore. She was a symbol of fearless independence. Changing direction risked confusing the audience that grew up with her journey. Yet growth doesn't always look exciting. Sometimes it looks like restraint. Sometimes it looks like choosing survival over spectacle. And whether viewers realized it or not, those subtle changes were signaling something important. She wasn't chasing danger anymore. She was learning how to live with it. But that evolution raised a bigger question. If the road was no longer about proving anything, what was she really searching for now? By the time the channel exploded, people assumed everything must have felt easier. Millions of subscribers, global recognition, messages from fans saying she inspired them to chase their dreams. But fame didn't solve the problem, it complicated it. For Noraly Schoenmaker, the gap between how her life looked and how it actually felt kept growing. Success made stopping even harder. Walking away now wouldn't just disappoint herself, it would disappoint an audience that felt connected to her journey. Viewers spoke to her like they knew her, yet most of those connections existed only through a screen. The irony was brutal. Surrounded by attention, yet still deeply alone. Relationships became nearly impossible to maintain. Being constantly on the move doesn't leave room for consistency, and consistency is what real bonds need. Missed calls turned into months of silence. Catching up started to feel awkward. Life back home kept moving, while hers stayed suspended on the road. Even moments of achievement came without anyone to share them with. No familiar faces to celebrate with. No one to sit beside her when the exhaustion hit. Just the next destination, the next upload, the next obligation. At some point, the question stopped being about adventure or fear. It became personal. Was this lifestyle still chosen, or was it now something she felt trapped maintaining? And as that realization settled in, another shift was already happening, one that viewers would slowly start to notice. For all the miles she's ridden, there's one thing the journey never quite delivered: closure. The road gave distance, distraction, and purpose, but it never fully replaced what was left behind. For Noraly Schoenmaker, movement became a way of coping. As long as she kept going, there was no time to sit still with unanswered questions. That's the part viewers rarely consider. Solo travel can heal, but it can also delay things. Emotions don't disappear just because borders change. They wait, and eventually, no amount of scenery can drown them out. The loneliness wasn't just physical anymore. It became emotional. a quiet reminder that independence doesn't automatically equal fulfillment. There's a reason she's never framed her journey as an escape anymore. It feels more like a process, a long one where strength and vulnerability coexist. She didn't ride away from her past expecting instant peace. She rode because standing still hurt more at the time. And maybe that's why her story resonates so deeply. Not because it's fearless, but because it's human, messy, unfinished. The road didn't magically fix everything, but it gave her space to rebuild on her own terms. Still, that raises one final question. When the cameras are off and the bike finally stops, what happens next? Is the road still enough? Or was it only ever meant to be one chapter, not the whole story? In the end, the most powerful part of her story isn't the distance traveled or the dangers faced, it's the honesty it quietly reveals. Noraly Schoenmaker built a life most people only dream about, yet that dream came with trade-offs few are willing to admit. Freedom gave her purpose, but it also demanded isolation. Adventure brought meaning, but not always peace. Her journey challenges the fantasy sold online, that escaping the ordinary automatically fixes what's broken inside. Sometimes it just gives you space to confront it, and sometimes that space feels painfully empty. The road didn't make her invincible, it made her self-aware. That's what makes her story linger. It's not just about travel, it's about choosing an unconventional life and living with every consequence that comes with it. Because at some point, the question isn't how far you can go alone, it's whether the destination is still worth the loneliness it takes to get there.